So welcome back to the channel. Bit of a strange video for me. I'm not one for doing rig making tutorials. This isn't a rig making tutorial. If you want rig making tutorials, there are hundreds out there and every one of them will help you tie a good rig. This is just some ideas that I've got, just some stuff that's been going around in my head for a little while. Since I was using the Trident rig bodies, they're completely crimped, there's no knots. When you buy these, you just tie your own snoods and hooks on. And I was watching one of Will's streams the other night and he was making some conger rigs with £100 line, but he was crimping them and eliminating all the knots, and it just made me think about the way carp fishing's gone and the way that they use crimps to create rigs, eliminating the knots. And that's the other thing, when you buy rigs with knots, you don't know what knot they've tied. And some people have got confidence in certain knots. Some people might like a blood knot, a uni knot, a grinner knot, a palomar knot. And it's all a bit of a minefield. So what I've done is I've ordered the crimping kit from a website called Carpers Essentials. I'll put a link in the description. But it's really reasonable. I mean, £1.25 or £1.75 for 25 crimps, which is a lot cheaper than the other brands that are out there. The same goes with the pliers, especially designed pliers for the crimps. But what I've done is I've looked at what I use mainstream. I fish the south coast. I fish Portsmouth and I fish Eastney and I fish Gosport, and I use 5-ounce leads predominantly. So I use a £60 shock leader. I use £60 rig bodies and I use £30 hook links as a rule when I'm fishing sand eels, squid, bluey, for rays, congers. I've had double figure rays, double figure congers on that kit and it served me well. So looking at the diameters, 0.65 and 0.5, I've gone for 0.7 and 0.6 on the crimps, so that I can match the crimp size to the diameter of the line. And what it's done is last night I sat and made this Pulley Pennell rig. Now if I just click that up, you will see, he says, all fingers and thumbs, that is your bog standard Pulley Pennell rig, right? Imp at the bottom, Pennell, I've got a 4.0 and a 2.0 chinu, and then I've got a Gemini pulley bead. But the difference with this rig is that I've made it entirely out of double barrel crimps, the rig body and the snood, so there's no knots on this at all. Now I've given them a good pull with the knot puller, and they're not slipping for nothing because they're crimped properly. You've got to get the crimp just right in the jaws and crimp it sideways so you squash the two barrels together, and then that gives you a beautiful crimp, a strong crimp, a streamlined, straight and neat crimp, and it just negates the need to have knots completely. The other thing that I've realised is the hooking potential. Now when you tie a hook on with a knot, it squeezes down and traps the eye of the hook, rendering it straight with the line, so that there's no movement in the actual hook. The line's got to move with it. But by using crimps, what you're doing is you're creating almost like a perfection loop when you're fishing with a dongle, something like that. You're giving yourself a little bit of movement on the hook, and I don't think that's going to be a bad thing. I think that's going to be a good thing, having that little bit of movement there, possibly. Again, this is just all ideas and I haven't actually put this into practice yet, but what I have done is I've made this one rig and it looks lovely. I'm really happy with it, that it's all crimped and it's not knotted. Proof in the pudding is going to be when I go out fishing. The thing that did worry me was when that bottom bead pushes up against the hook snood, so the bead is going to get pushed up against the crimp, but because I'm using big hard plastic beads, they butt up against the crimp and it cushions nicely. I don't see there being any issues, but I need to fish with this to make sure that it's all okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make one of these pulley pennels quickly, show you how I do it, eliminating all the knots. What we need is 2 of the 0.6 crimps and then 2 of the 0.7 crimps. Now because they're 0.1 mil apart, I'm going to sit them next to their relevant packets so that I don't get them mixed up. But the first thing to do is to grab yourself a length of your main rig body. I'm not going to make them massive, maybe 3 foot. And clip that off. Now you've got to clip this off at a 45-degree angle. I'm going to get myself out a clip for the bottom of the rig. 2 hard beads to go either side of the pulley bead. A pulley bead, I'm going to lose that one in a minute, in the middle. And a big swivel. And that's all of the components we need. So I'm going to put my 0.7 crimp, because it's on the body. So I'm putting the line through one side of the crimp, then on goes the swivel, and then back in through the other side of the crimp. And then that's the other thing as well, when I'm doing rigs to be a certain length for certain purposes where you might want it to clip in just right under the tension of a spring, you make your hook links and you give an inch for the knot, but it doesn't always work out that way. But using a crimp, you can cut the hook link to the desired length, and you know that that's how much line you need to go round the swivel and then back through the crimp again. It's making sense in my head. When you buy this crimp tool with these crimps, the 0.7 is going to be in the biggest hole, so the one closest to the wire cutters, away from the tip, and then the 0.6 mil is going to be the middle one. Now when you crimp these down, you've got to make sure that it's sideways in the groove, in the right groove, and you just squeeze down, and that causes an absolutely beautiful little crimp. Doesn't damage the line, and there's no chance of any slippage. That's what I did do. just a little aside. Bought 3 of these Tronics Pro bits bags to go in the bottom of my box, and they're absolutely fantastic. But the problem I had is because they're all identical, I kept grabbing the wrong one. So what I've done now is I've put a bit of yellow cord on my leads, I've put a bit of red power gum on my tools, and I've left nothing on the one that's got all my hooks and bits of terminal tackle in. So now when I look, I can see which one's which. Yeah. So now I'm going to grab my knot puller, stick that in the end of the swivel, wrap that around my hand a couple of times. Ouch. There's nothing wrong with that. That's as strong as any knot you're going to tie, maybe stronger. Yeah. So there's that proof's in the pudding there. Then I'm going to take that tag end off. There's a tiny little bit of a tag end, and I'm just going to, actually I haven't left any tag end on that one, and that's the idea. You don't want to leave too much of a tag end coming out back through the crimp, because that's what the bead is going to butt up against, and it needs to butt up against the crimp and not be springing on a piece of line. So on the other end I'm going to slide on like we would with a normal pulley pennel rig. Bead, pulley bead, and then that bead that kept wanting to escape. That's on. Then the next thing to do is to put my quick link clip on, which is going to attach to my imp or my splashdown. I always put one of these on in case I want to swap between an imp or splashdown, or take it off completely if I'm going to be fishing with the plain lead. I used to put the imp straight onto this and then found myself cutting it off if I needed another attachment. So yeah. So what I'm going to do again, I'm going to make sure that my line end is cut at a 45-degree angle, or at least to a point. Crimp in through one side. It's quite tight because it's a 0.65. It's a 0.65 line, and it's a 0.7 crimp. So there's half of a, not even half a millimetre, is it? It's it's tight. Yeah, through the the clip, and then back through the other side of the crimp, and then I can pull the main body through, so I've got that little bit of movement there, which with a, like I said, with a knot you haven't got that bit of movement. Now crimp that one down. And I have left a little bit of a tag end on that one, so I'm just going to take my snips and snip that down, and now I've got, oh, that is so neat. Honestly, I'm going to get some, put another lens on and show you how neat that is. I can put a knot puller on there, and again, give that a damn good pull, but that's not going anywhere. I think that line's going to break before the crimp gives out. And we've got what we'd normally have with a standard pulley rig body. We've got swivel one end, clip the other end, and we've got a pulley bead trapped between two beads. But we've made it completely with crimps. So to the end of the swivel, I'm going to be tying my snood material, which in this case is £30 Oblivion, which I think is really nice line. It's made by Asso, Oblivion, memory free snood line. So again, I'm going to snip that to a 45-degree angle. Squeeze that one tight. Take off what you need. So there, and then cut that at an angle. Now at this stage, I'm going to get my bit of tubing, which is going to run up and down my chinu. Now, last chinu. If Cox and Rule are watching, I could do with some chinus. 2 O's, but a selection would be good. So on goes the tubing. On goes a hook through the front of the eye, and then what I do is I just wiggle that over the eye. It's pretty cold outside. First really heavy frost of the year we've had last night. This morning the cars are covered in a white film. Looks pretty, but it's cold. So there's our pennel hook. And down on the business end, I'm going to be sticking that the end of the main, stick the end of the snood through one side of the crimp, and I'm going to stick a 3/0 on this one. 3/0 BMX. Absolutely superb hook. And then back through the crimp again. leaving a little bit of a loop, so you've got a little bit of a dangle going on, which I like. Make sure that's in there nice. Squish it down, that is absolutely perfect. Then I'll slide the pennel hook down. And there you have it. Perfect. And then what I'll do is I'll put a lead on. Let me show you the number now, we're going to put an imp on it. Grab an imp. Do you know what? Why don't they build imps for you? Because they hurt your fingers when you're making them. Don't like it. Bothers me. So grab that. Grab a lead. A tiny lead, doesn't really matter. Grab a lead. Put that on. Stick the hook in there. Grab hold of the pulley bead. And then you will see that we've got our perfect Pulley Pennell rig. 3/0, 2/0, imp, Gemini bead. Always use the Gemini one. Doesn't damage the line. And used completely with crimps, streamlined, tarty. Fantastic. That's how I'm going to be doing mine from now on. So nothing groundbreaking. This isn't going to shatter the rig making industry. This is something that people do in boats when they're using 100 and 150 pound lines, and also in carp fishing. So it's nothing new. Just I'm going to incorporate it into my normal run-of-the-mill rigs now. My loop rigs, my up and over rigs, my Pulley Pennell rigs, and I like it. It's one extra thing to do. It's one extra thing to purchase. So a lot of people might think I'll stick with my knots. I'm quite happy with them, and that's brilliant. But like I said, having seen the Trident rigs made completely with crimps and how neat and streamlined they are and how strong they are, just thought I'd give it a go. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.